Here begins the tale of Ashmiir Asyr, son of the aspen root, whose name is whispered in both shadowed glen and firelit hall, a name carved in silence and sorrow, yet remembered in song. A warrior of grim renown and peerless skill, he is counted among the most feared of the north, an Agrimonian ranger whose name alone stirs both awe and dread. From the shadowed hills of Aspen Grove he came, that ancient woodland veiled in golden aspen and forgotten song. There, amidst root and leaf, he honed the ways of bow and blade, until no rival could match his hand nor eye. In the long wars that shaped the fate of Agrimony, his deeds rang louder than horn or steel. Like the great captains of old, he carved his name into the annals of victory, not with boast or banner, but with the silence of the dead. By his hand alone, it is said, fell 27 officers of the enemy host, and at least 425 foot soldiers met their end. There, through his countless victories, he earns the feared nickname of Pale Horse, a name that he despises. He walks still, shadow-sworn, oath-bound, and resolute. Yet the winds of war no longer carry his name as they once did. For his path has turned, drawn not by blood or vengeance, but by love, deep and unshakable. He walks now for them. Elania, his beloved, radiant as the morning sun upon the silver leaves of Aspen Grove, whose grace softens the edges of a world hardened by steel. And Adeline, their child of light and wonder, fearless, keen of mind, with her father's fire in her spirit and her mother's light in her eyes. In the hush between shadows, when the sword is sheathed and the bow unstrung, he lays aside the mantle of the hunter. There, beneath bough and starlight, he plays the songs of old on strings worn smooth by love, until sleep gently takes them in his arms, wife and daughter nestled in peace. And when the dawn returns, he teaches Adeline the art of the bow and the dance of the blade, not for battle, but for the strength it gives the soul. But the songs of war are not easily silenced, and the shadow of duty ever lingers on the path of those who have tasted battle. So it came to pass that Ashmiir, though bound by love, was called forth once more. The bow he had long laid to rest was taken up again, and with quiet resolve he vanished into the mists of another grim errand, one written in the ink of danger and blood. Yet while he hunted in lands afar, doom crept ever closer to his hearth. From the broken ranks of Corm, a rogue company, vengeful and without honor, followed whispers and rumors through wood and vale, until at last they came upon the hidden glade of his home. There, beneath the emerald boughs, they found the dwelling of the Pale Horse. And at the threshold stood Elania and Adeline, mother and daughter, caught unready. Terror shone in the eyes of the child, and her mother's arms became both shield and prayer, as the wind carried no answer, only the dread that he would not return in time. At the waning of his grim task, his blade once more stained in the service of Agrimony's crown, Ashmiir returned, swift as shadow, silent as the grave. But no welcome met him. No light nor laughter lingered in that forest-bound home. There, amid the still embers of the hearth, he found ruin. Elania, fair and steadfast, lay cold. And Adeline, bright blossom of his soul, cradled in her mother's arms, lifeless. No cry had warned the trees. No whisper reached the wind. The silence was complete. Ashmiir fell to his knees, and the cry he loosed was as a storm upon the mountains. Anguish gripped him like fire, and wrath like frost. In trembling arms he held them, rocking with the weight of a world unmade. When the stars gave way to dawn, he laid them side by side beneath the earth, as kin should rest. And ere he covered them, he placed in Adeline's gentle hands her beloved Bugara, the small black panther she would never part with in life, nor now in death. Upon their grave he planted a single seedling, an aspen sapling, tender and green. And there, in the hush of that hollow glade, began the tale of vengeance whispered by the trees. Heeding the command of Agrimony's high lords without question, Ashmiir, son of the wood, was soon overcome by a storm of wrath and sorrow, his heart consumed by an unquenchable thirst for vengeance. In time, he rode forth with 5 brethren, rangers of renown, forged in the silent wilds and sworn to the will of their realm. To them was given a grim charge, to waylay a caravan thought to bear vital supplies for the armies of Corm. Naught was to remain, neither wagon nor soul. Fire and death were to be their instruments, mercy, a forgotten word. And so they fell upon it like wolves in the dark, laying waste to the train and setting the earth alight with flame. Yet amidst the ruin and the cries of the fallen, Ashmiir beheld the truth, cruel and shrouded no longer. Not soldiers nor arms did the devastated caravan bear, but wives and children of Qawm, journeying in secret to rejoin their kin. Even the young, innocent in the eyes of all save war, were marked for death by decree. In that dread hour, Ashmiir's spirit turned. The veil was torn, and he saw with bitter clarity that the rot ran deep not only in the halls of Qawm, but also in the proud towers of Agrimony. The righteousness he once believed in had curdled into shadow, and his people, no less stained than those they fought, were but pawns in a greater darkness. And lo, as Ashmiir turned his back upon the burning ruin of the caravan, his heart heavy with the bitter truth of senseless bloodshed wrought by both warring hosts, his steps faltered upon a hidden form, small and trembling, enshrouded by the broken timbers and ash of the slaughter. There, beneath shattered beams and scorched cloth, a child cowered, her eyes wide with dread. Ashmiir, with wary grace, knelt and extended his hand, bidding her heart be still with gentle voice and solemn gaze. Soft were his words, like the hush of leaves upon the breeze, and in time her fear abated. Slowly did she creep forth from her shelter, and in her fragile form he saw the shadow of Adeline, his daughter long lost to the cruel hand of fate. With tender hand he brushed the grime from her brow, but ere peace could take root, a voice rang out behind him. One of his own, clad in the green and black of their fellowship, had spied the child. Drawing near with wrath in his step, the man bade Ashmiir stand aside. But the girl, trembling, pressed herself to Ashmiir's flank, seeking his protection. "Nay," said Ashmiir, his voice low as thunder. "You saw nothing this day." Yet the soldier would not yield. With blade drawn and fury unbridled, he raised his weapon to strike the child. Steel rang in the gloom. Ashmiir, swift as moonlight through trees, caught the stroke with his own blade, and with but one movement of the wrist, turned aside the blow. Then, with sorrow in his heart and fire in his eyes, he drove his sword into the belly of the man he once called kin. So was the peace broken. The fellowship, 5 in number, turned upon him as one. Yet Ashmiir, swift of bow and sure of sword, moved as a tempest. With grace born of elven blood and countless battles past, he felled them each one by one until only silence remained, broken only by the crackling of the flames and the breath of his own lungs. But lo, the tale doth not end there. For Ashmiir, weary of soul yet resolute in purpose, sought the child for whom he had wagered his very life. Alas, he found her, and grievous was the sight. Broken and near to death she lay, her small form marred by the cruelty of war. With a cry, he rushed to her side and gathered her into his arms. A single tear escaped him, falling upon her cheek, for she gazed upon him not in fear, but in wonder, for the young know not the ways of dying. She reached up with frail hand, brushing his face with the softness of farewell, and then, without a word, the light passed from her eyes. And there in the ruin of fire and ash, Ashmiir, son of the forest, gave voice to his sorrow. With bitter lament and wrath unspoken, he called upon the gods, whether to hear or to reckon, he cared not. At length, he laid her gently upon the ashen earth and turned from the ruin of the caravan, his heart shattered by the deeds Agrimony had compelled him to do. But even as he walked into the shadow of the trees, a faint sound reached his ears, a whimpering, soft and mournful. He turned back. There, amid splintered wood and scorched iron, he beheld a small cage, and within it, a lone panther cub. Around it lay the bodies of strange and noble beasts, once proud, now slain in the chaos. His breath caught, for the cub stirred memory within him. Bugara, the beloved stuffed beast his daughter Adeline would never part with. And so, in that moment of ruin, Ashmiir saw a sign not of fate, but of love enduring beyond death. With cautious hands, he unlatched the cage and stepped back, bidding the creature to flee to freedom. Yet the cub did not run. Instead, it lingered near, drawn to the grief and gentleness of the elf. It came to his side, pressed against his flank, and refused to leave. And thus, beneath the starless sky and through the embers of what once was, Ashmiir strode into the woods, and the panther cub, silent and faithful, followed him into the night. Thus, with a panther at his side and the bitter truth laid bare that no banner in this war bore righteousness, he cast off the cloak of Agrimonian service. He turned from the path of blood and command, choosing instead the shadowed wilds beyond the reach of kings, where no oaths bind and no thrones deceive. Henceforth, he lived as an outlander, far from the rot of thrones and the ruin of men, a silent witness to the folly of each passing age. Nigh on 10 winters had passed since Ashmiir turned his back upon the banners of agrimony, vanishing into the deep places of the world where kings held no sway. On a dusken eve beneath the sighing boughs, he returned from the hunt, his tread silent upon the pine-strewn path, a felled hog slung over his shoulder, and 3 foxes bound to his belt by leather cord. But as he neared the weathered cabin that had long been his refuge, Boogerah, the black-shadowed panther and companion of his solitude, let forth a low, warning growl, deep and troubled. At once, Ashmiir halted, his hand falling to the hilt at his side, though no blade was yet drawn. A chill stole down his spine, for there are few things more foreboding than danger within one's own hearth. He stood in silence, ears straining for sound beneath the hush of the trees. Then, steadying his breath and masking the unease that coiled in his chest, he cast down the carcass with a heavy thud upon the mossy earth and spoke with quiet command, firm as oaken root. He called into the dwelling, his voice low yet firm, seeking the one who might dwell within. But no voice answered him. With measured breath and a hand upon the door, he drew it open, and at once the air was thick with the strange perfume of onion and ginger, pungent and warm. There, beneath the hearthlight's gentle glow, stood a woman, fair of face, golden of hair, and unknown to him. She moved with grace as she tended to a meal unbidden. A single tear welled in his eye as a name, long held in sorrow, escaped his lips in a whisper, Alanya. Yet as the stranger turned, her countenance not that of his lost beloved, he knew in heart and mind that this was not she, but another. "You are early," said the woman, her voice cloaked in quiet certainty. Bewilderment passed like a shadow across his face, though he veiled it well. He laid down his bow beside the threshold, and from his shoulder slipped the satchel, which he placed upon the oaken rack. At last he drew a breath, long and steady, and with a voice edged in command, he spoke. "Name your purpose, and speak plain. I come not to stir old wounds, but to offer you a choice. Break bread with me, share your kill, and when the fire is low and the embers speak soft, I shall tell you why I have come." He hesitated, but the weariness of solitude softened his heart. Then he nods. Reluctantly, he placed the fox carcasses onto the table, and she wasted no time and began to dress it, then alas, held out a second blade. "What are you waiting for?" she said. "The beast won't butcher itself." And so they worked, side by side in silence, save for the whispers of steel on flesh and the occasional flicker of flame. After they ate in stillness, she leaned back and whispered of her youth, of a man not unlike Ashmiir, who had fled into the forest to escape the ruin of his soul, who hanged himself from the tallest tree in his garden. That man was her father. "So tell me, pale horse, how do you endure the weight of death?" Ashmiir rose, and his voice was iron. "You have eaten your fill. Now speak plainly. I have no appetite for riddles." The woman leaned in, her gaze unwavering. "Very well. I am Lady Lana. I have sought you across the wild for one purpose. I need your help. You are not just Ashmiir Asyr. You are the blade in the dark, the forgotten wrath of a broken realm. If you know what I have done," he growled, "then you know what I am capable of." "Indeed," she said, "but I also know your code, however frayed. And you will not harm me. I come to offer you the one thing your soul cries out for, the return of your wife and daughter." He froze, as if struck by a blow. His hand went to the door, ready to cast her into the night. "I do not play at madness. Speak lies no more." "Then open the door," she said. And he did. Boogerah, his panther and only companion, strode in and walked without hesitation to Lady Lana, accepting her touch as if they were old kin. Ashmiir was stunned. "Who are you?" he asked. "They name me the Lady of the Lands. Some call me Witch of the Wilds. Absurd titles, perhaps, but names carry weight, as yours once did. I do not come for your bow, pale horse. I come because I understand." "Then what is it you ask?" She answers. "There is a caravan, bound for Stellaria in 3 days' time. You must ride with them, learn what they carry, and steal from them a blade known as Nightfall, forged of 100 black pearls. Bring me knowledge. Bring me the sword. Then, and only then, shall I restore your family to you." Ashmiir narrowed his eyes. How do I know you will keep your word? How do I know this is no trick? You do not, she said. But doubt brings you nothing. Hope may bring you everything. Curiosity took hold of Ashmiir as he asked, then why not use this magic yourself? Her voice grew distant. My father was a butcher, my mother a ghost. I loved them both, but they belong to the dead now. Let them rest. He paced a moment, then halted. I will accept your bargain, but on one condition. She wasted no time with a retort, speak it. Ashmiir continued, should you break our pact, or should your promise prove false, then you will give me your heart, and I shall consume it, as my ancestors once did in oath and vengeance alike. Thus shall our bond be sealed. We both have much to lose. There was silence, then a grin. You drive a grim bargain, pale horse, she said, but I accept. Let us change the world, or be consumed by it. And lo, beneath a solemn parting veil, Lady Lana did take her leave, her cloak trailing like twilight upon the threshold. Ashmiir stood in silence, and Bugara, the great panther, kept watch beside him, their eyes tracing her fading figure as she vanished into the dusk. And the night waned, drawing ever closer to the pale breath of dawn, yet still did Ashmiir linger near the hearth. The fire's glow danced upon his weary face, and Bugara stirred not. There, in the hush between embers and morning, he pondered long and deep whether the hour had come to rise once more from the veiled shadows, and ride beneath the mantle of the pale horse once more.